Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
When did we turn into prime Barcelona? Hey! Hello everybody and welcome back to the Daily Newcastle podcast. My name is Michael Grahamso and I'm here with an instant reaction to Newcastle United's victory over Crystal Palace on Wednesday night. A truly fantastic performance, and it does have to be said, I'm going to get straight into it. It starts from the first minute. Jacob Murphy whips in what is probably the first of about 10 perfect crosses he puts in during the game. Slight exaggeration, but Joe Linton just can't get a good contact on the ball, and it should have been 1-0 after about 30 seconds. But thankfully, it doesn't cost Newcastle. There are a couple of decent moments for Palace in the first half. The first, Richards heads over from a corner, but it's hard to take away from what was ultimately the Jacob Murphy show in that first half. And I said in the preview, I was very excited about the idea of Jacob Murphy coming up against Tyreek Mitchell, because I didn't think Mitchell had really been as good as what we could have seen him this season. I actually been slightly disappointed about him as a football fan. And I think we saw exactly why this in this game. But Murphy, absolutely fantastic, but he constantly had the better of Mitchell on that right-hand side, Crystal Palace's left. He created two fantastic chances for Alexander Isak in the first 8 minutes. First, a low drive from Isak. Great save by Henderson. And you can see why Henderson's so highly renowned, because ultimately Newcastle could have had 5 before we even got 3. We genuinely had a fantastic performance from the team, and Dean Henderson was very much the reason why Crystal Palace was still in it, as long as they were. But I will say, there's nothing really Dean Henderson can do about the first goal, because Jacob Murphy does something absolutely spectacular. And if there was any doubts on whether Sandro Tonali meant his against Brentford, there certainly isn't any doubts on whether Jacob Murphy meant this effort right here, because it's brilliant to get the ball to him on the right-hand side in the first place. And he's got his head down. He takes a look up. You can see he's looking directly into the eyes of Dean Henderson from so far out, not directly at the eyes, obviously, but he's looking in that direction. He sees that there's nothing there in the box, and he just rifles it with such venomosity. And it goes into the roof of the net, and there is no doubt in anyone's mind that was 100% meant as a shot. Absolutely fantastic. What a goal. And of course, he points to Sandro Tonali afterwards, as if to say, anything you can do, I can do better. And if they're going to have that kind of competition between them, we're going to have a very, very good end of the season as Newcastle fans. But the game wasn't without controversy. Crystal Palace were given a penalty that in my eyes is a little dubious, but I do see why it was given. Nick Pope comes out, tries to punch a free kick away. Realistically, he shouldn't. It's so far away. I'm not sure why he makes the decision in the first place. And to be honest, maybe it's me not knowing the law, but I've seen plenty of times where the goalkeeper has clattered the attacking player, but because he's got a touch on the ball, goalkeepers kind of took priority and they've gone, yeah, it's the goalkeeper, he can do what he wants. Pope does get the slightest of touches on the ball, which, to be honest, you can only really see the change of direction when you see a replay. I will say I did think it was a penalty at first. After seeing the replay, I don't. But I can see why it was given. Pope was reckless, potentially dangerous, and it gave Crystal Palace a way back into the game, despite not looking like they'd be anywhere near it. But fortunately, someone's writing quite the script at Newcastle United this season, and there was a very quick redemption arc for Nick Pope. Eberechi Eze as some might say, summons his idol, Paul Pogba, to provide one of the stupidest looking penalties I've ever seen in my life. Pogba's had a few, but there was the stutter, the stop, the eyes. He might as well have done a little dance from a video game or something in the middle before passing it straight to Nick Pope, because honestly, it was ridiculous and it looks cold when it comes off. But for Eze in that moment, the northeast was absolutely freezing, and he probably wanted the ground to swallow him up because it was absolutely dreadful. Straight at Pope, and then, speaking of players that probably wanted the ground to swallow him up, Mark Gay gets his second goal of the season for Newcastle, putting it into his own net. And while I can predict that he was one of the players that didn't have Alexander Isak as their triple captain in fantasy football, because Barnes gets into the box after great work from Joe Linton and Livramento, goes to cut across to Isak, who would have not an open goal, but a very good chance of scoring. And Mark Gay slides in, hits him on the arm, and it goes into the back of the net. So unfortunate for Mark Gay, but he was Newcastle's top goal-scoring defender for the season in the Premier League, should I say, for about 10 minutes. Fabian Schär clearly didn't take too kindly to that being taken away from him, but we'll get into that in a moment. Joe Linton, for me, I just want to say as well, arguably one of his best games for us this season. He's been sometimes a little bit off the boil, but he's been so good this season. And I think in that midfield of Bruno and Tonali, he does get overlooked so much, and he's such a brilliant, brilliant player. And speaking of brilliant players, there was one who probably will be very angry with himself at the end of the game, and that's Alexander Isak. He had quite a few chances today in the first half, and another one comes just between the second and the third goal. Chris Richards does brilliantly to block the initial effort. For a team that lost 5-1, I actually think Chris Richards put in a good performance for Palace. Probably another one of the reasons why it was only 5, which sounds weird, but I did think he played well, and I criticised him in the preview, so I just felt it necessary to put that out there. He did have a decent game, particularly for a defender whose team lost 5-1. But Isak, again, on the turn after the block, just couldn't get his foot around it, and missed another chance that for any other striker, you'd be sitting there going, yeah, it's a quarter of a chance. But for Alexander Isak, it's a half chance, and he'll be kicking himself. But obviously he gets his goal a little later on. And then Harvey Barnes decides, you know what, a brace against Man United wasn't good enough for me. The assist for the second goal wasn't good enough for me. He's starting to use that bow and arrow more than Robin Hood. Sandro Tonali does excellent in midfield, finds Harvey Barnes, who drives forward. Maxime Lacroix's up against him. He sort of slows down a little bit, so Lacroix can't continue his sprint. Then just a little burst, puts it in the back of the net, cross the goalkeeper, and there's nothing Dean Henderson can do. And obviously, even if he did get a hand on it, you notice there's so much with Alexander Isak. He would have been right there if Henderson had got a touch on it to put it in the back of the net, and that is something that Isak does do really well. So even though he was off the boil a bit today, his positioning was still spot on as well. And I want to make it clear, I ain't criticising the best striker in the league at all. I'm just saying for his standards, he probably was a little bit upset today. And then, where do I go next? Well, there's only one place I can go, actually. It was very, very quick, the fourth goal after the third, sorry. It's another fantastic cross from Jacob Murphy from the free kick. Well won by Bruno Guimaraes. And, of course, he finds the head of Fabian Schär, who scoops the ball brilliantly into the back of the net, beating Dean Henderson. We don't tend to score too much from free kicks and corners this season, so not in comparison to previous. So it is good to see. Obviously, we remember what it was like under Pardew, McLaren, and, well, some of the other dross we've had over the years. So seeing more goals from set pieces, always a big tick in my book. And then, similarly to, well, obviously the fourth goal from Shaw goes in. And then, you know what? I'm going to leave it there for the first part. And we're going to go into Ken's Bioniq.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Absolutely excellent stuff. And you'll notice it didn't actually even try to repeat itself there. It only seems to happen when Ian's around. So I am going to blame you for that one, Ian. And I'm going to blame you for something else a little bit at the end of the episode as well, because you might have me believing in something that I've said wouldn't happen for the last couple of months, but I will get to that. But back to the game. Similarly to how we've seen a number of games play out towards this part of the season for Newcastle, we slowed things down in the second half, probably because realistically we didn't need to go at the ferocity we did in the first half. It almost felt merciful. But what did happen was that Alexander Isak got his goal, which ended up being the last goal of the game and was arguably the hardest chance that Alexander Isak had in the entire game. Joe Linton, mentioned him earlier, does fantastically well to dispossess Lacroix, who, to be honest, is usually a fantastic defender. I thought he had a poor game today. But that's just what Newcastle United can do to you. And Joe Linton's tackle ends up at the feet of Alexander Isak, who simply just turns, spots Dean Henderson, spots a little bit in the corner of the goal, but just down there, and just curls it beautifully into the back of the net, like we've seen him do so many times this season. And it's arguably the most frustrating thing about Alexander Isak, because when the easy chances come, it's almost as if he just sits there and goes, nah, nah, nah. I don't want that. I'm not a tap-in merchant. Give me the screamers. Give me the beautifully curled shots into the corners. And if we're losing games, we probably are sitting there if we did lose today and Isak missed his chances, everyone would be saying, oh, Isak's got to be more clinical. But when he can do that, when he can score some of the goals he scored this season, he's just such a fantastic player. And I'll be honest, for someone that scored the winning goal in a cup final as well, he could miss Darwin Núñez levels of chances, and I genuinely still think I would love him. What a player. And then the game starts to die out. The substitutions come. And to be honest, you could tell Crystal Palace were getting a little bit embarrassed because they were starting to take lumps out of the Newcastle United players. Fabian Schär ended up bloodied, and Anthony Gordon ended up spending more time on the deck than standing, and not in the way that we used to see him do it at Everton. So, the biggest news, or the biggest news, as most people would say, for Newcastle in that second half was the fact that Joe Linton managed to avoid his 10th yellow card, which means he will not get a 2-game ban this season when he eventually does pick up that 10th yellow, which would have led to him, if he got it today, missing Aston Villa at the weekend in Ipswich Town. We saw it with Bruno Guimaraes last season. Yellow card merchants, as they are for anyone that bets on Newcastle regularly. Bruno loved a yellow card. He's only got 5 this season. Joe Linton's been picking up more of the yellows this year. I mean, not that he didn't last year, but he only picked up the 9. The 10th was avoidable. I mean, we thought we were going to get it when he was offering Manuel Ugarte out into the car park against Manchester United, but thankfully it didn't happen, and we're not going to end up with a red card or a suspension to the bruiser in Newcastle's midfield. Although when you look at it, with Sean Longstaff, I know that's a name that most people don't want to see on the pitch, but Lewis Miley as well, Joe Willock. If there was ever going to be a suspension to a position in the team, you almost wouldn't mind it being the centre midfield position. But thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. I think if I'm being really critical, the only small negative, in my opinion, was the lack of game time given to younger players. For me, when you're 5-0 up against a decent side, it is the perfect opportunity to give minutes to the likes of Lewis Miley, William Osula, and instead we saw Callum Wilson and Sean Longstaff introduced. It's not Football Manager, but let's be honest, we've all played the game and we've all sat there going, right, you know what, I've got this young 16-year-old who could be the next Messi. If we're 2-0 up or something after 60 minutes, I'll bring him on. We had 5. And I'm not. Lewis Miley is a fantastic player. William Osula has the potential to be. He's raw talent. He's just not there yet. And the minutes in the bank, I think, would nurture them quite well. But there is the argument that Callum Wilson will be leaving the club in the summer. He has 49 goals. We want him to get his 50th. Everyone wants him to get the 50th. Have that feel-good moment. The goodbye goal, should we say, for Callum Wilson. But he doesn't seem fit, which is the issue. That being said, can't criticise him for his time at Newcastle. He's been absolutely fantastic, whether it was under Bruce or under Eddie Howe. He was instrumental in us finishing 4th. He was even more instrumental in the fact that when we weren't a championship team, the year we finished 4th. So can't say a bad word about Callum Wilson as a person, as a player. Just, I wish he was a little bit more fit. But wherever he does end up after his spell at Newcastle, I really hope he stays injury-free and gets back to his best. And, even if that does come back to bite us, it would be great to see Callum Wilson scoring goals again, even if it's not for Newcastle. And then one moment that was relatively funny, we're getting to the end now. I was looking for the amusing parts in a boring second half, really. It's 5-0 to Newcastle, and I'd forgot that the Palace fans were really in St James's Park until the 80th minute where they started singing 5-0 and you still don't sing. It was a nice reminder that they turned up. Maybe the bus was late. Maybe they'd got stuck in the queue for the pints. We all know what St James's Park is like. But credit to them. It's a long way back to London when you're, let's say, not very good. But with that said, Newcastle United have picked up yet another victory. We sit 3rd in the table, and the game was far more comfortable than anybody would have imagined. I picked out this game as one where I thought we'd maybe lose or draw, and I thought Palace are a fantastic team away from home. We haven't got Eddie Howe. Is this the banana skin of the season before Villa? Nah, it wasn't. It was an absolutely emphatic victory. And, well, on Saturday afternoon, we faced Villa with a chance to go 9 points ahead of 6th place with a win. But with that in mind, I want to leave you all today with a question. Can Newcastle United finish in 2nd place? Yes, I'm asking that again. Can Newcastle United finish in 2nd place? They are currently 4 points behind Arsenal, in great form, but the games coming up are tough for the Magpies. I've maintained all season, I don't think it can be done. Ian has tried to get me to believe all season, and I'm saying I can't, but I'm starting to believe. What do you think? Can Newcastle finish top 2, or should we just focus on getting top 5 for now, and qualifying for the Champions League? Now that's all from me on the Daily Newcastle podcast. We obviously are going to end it with a get well to Eddie Howe, but I also want to end it with up the Mags!
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.